Well, hello and welcome to Beaverdale Books. Thanks so much for joining us for tonight's book talk. Before we begin, I want to mention a couple of our upcoming events. This Wednesday, Hasty Press is going to be here sharing a couple of their books with author readings of Iowa Weird, Volume 1, and a very special Hasty Christmas. Then on Thursday, Emmeline Clark will be here to share his new book, A Boy on the Farm, and you can find all the details on our website or sign up for our twice monthly newsletter. Silent No Longer is the story of Robert Stack's 40-year career in the disability industry, revealing the horrible neglect that persists today and asking why tens of thousands of people are still unnecessarily incarcerated in institutions that failed them. Robert is a veteran of the industry and the founder and CEO of Community Options, one of the largest nonprofit organizations supporting persons with disabilities today. He's a pioneer in promoting community-based housing and workforce training, advocating against outdated institutional practices. Starting as a young civil servant in 1980, he led efforts to close large institutions and transition individuals to community settings, long before the ADA and Olmsted decision formalized these changes. In 1989, he founded Community Options to provide dignified living and employment opportunities for people with disabilities, which now serves over 5,000 individuals across 12 states. Please join me in a very warm welcome for Robert Stack.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm very delighted to be here in the lovely Des Moines, Iowa, and I'm glad that everyone was able to make it in spite of the weather. And it's very exciting to be here. And my cohort next to me is Sabat Vasquez, and she's a recent graduate of Princeton University, and she's going to help delineate some of the ideas that were written and discussed in this book. But before I start, I wanted to say that, as was so eloquently described, I spent my entire life trying to emancipate people with disabilities from institutions, and we've done it very successfully in certain places. In other places, we've had a lot of struggles. And here in Iowa, we were happy that we were able to work diligently to close the Glenwood Center, and there were a lot of significant levels of abuse and neglect there. And I'm pleased to see that that facility has been closed, and there's still one left to go, and that's great. And I'm also happy that we were able to meet with the Attorney General today to discuss what's going on in the future, and she was extremely helpful to us and really lovely. So, but before I talk about the general concepts, I think it would be better served if I just read 2 pages of the book so that you've kind of gotten a flavor for everything that I'm doing here. So this is from Silent No Longer, and what I'm reading from it's called Aaron, 2023. We arrived at a private airfield in San Antonio, Texas, in time to watch the Pilatus Air Ambulance make its final approach. Our regional director in Texas, Samantha Cutler, and I were ready to take over the care of Aaron Davis, a 34-year-old man who was arriving from a Massachusetts institution. The aircraft taxied to a stop, and as the roar of the engines faded, the ground crew wheeled air stairs to the door. A man in a white shirt and jeans brought our new client down the stairs and pushed him onto the tarmac like a sack of potatoes. Almost 6 feet tall with long brown hair, the man looked lost, confused and frightened. I gasped, and Samantha's grip tightened on my arm. The institution's staff had shackled Aaron for the flight. Later we discovered they had also strapped him to a gurney. The sound of handcuffs and leg irons filled the quiet morning air as he shuffled forward. Once he regained his balance, he looked at the blue sky, squinting in the bright Texas sun. The Silence of the Lambs came to mind. I recalled the scene filmed in an aircraft hangar where armed guards wheeled Hannibal Lecter in to face Senator Ruth Martin. Strapped to a hand truck wearing a grotesque mask, with his hands and feet shackled, he looked the epitome of evil. but the scene before me was not a movie. We'd met Aaron in Massachusetts a few weeks earlier. He was a resident at the Judge Rotlandsburg Educational Center, where staff regularly administer electric shocks to residents to modify undesirable behaviors despite the controversy surrounding the practice. My organization, Community Options, deems this practice both ineffective and morally objectionable. Whenever feasible, we move individuals like Aaron, who face significant intellectual disabilities, into home environments with around-the-clock care. There is no doubt that Aaron's behavior is unpredictable and challenging. People with level 3 autism, which is characterized by severe challenges in social communication, as well as extremely inflexible behavior, struggle to manage and show their emotions, making them intensely frustrated. They often lash out at themselves and others. But Aaron had hurt no one and committed no crime. Samantha marched up to the white coat. "Remove the shackles now." Her voice was calm and polite, yet radiated resolve. "No can do, ma'am. He's dangerous. He's likely to lash out on the drive to the house." I took a step forward, and then changed my mind. Samantha stood firm, without breaking eye contact. She deliberately said, "Remove the leg irons." Drawing out each word, her voice had a chilling edge that left no doubt among those present about the outcome of the confrontation. The attendant shot me a sullen glance as he took out a key and unshackled Aaron's leg, drawing out the process longer than needed. The tension was palpable, but Aaron was calm. Once free, he flexed both ankles and looked across at Samantha with gratitude. 30 minutes later, we met the handover team in the driveway of a modest detached house in a pleasant San Antonio suburb. It would be Aaron's temporary home until we purchased housing for him and others in his home state of New Hampshire. He would receive 24/7 personalized home and medical care, and the Community Options Care Team would never physically restrain him. Samantha walked up to the house. The aides were manhandling Aaron to the front door and were about to take him inside. Samantha stepped in front of them and refused to let them cross the threshold. "This is our house. Remove the handcuffs and leave now." So this pretty much describes what happened, and I'm pleased to tell you that after Aaron was emancipated from this place, he was then lived in this San Antonio suburb, and he went to rodeos. He participated in a lot of community activities, and he eventually was able to get to a position where he was very comfortable with what it was going on. And as you can see from the cover of the book, he was patient enough to be able to sit there and have a photo shoot. And as of late, he was returned to New Hampshire, where he lives in a beautiful home, and he's doing very well. The last I saw him was a few months ago in October, and he was picking pumpkins, which he enjoyed, and that seemed like a really wonderful thing for him to do. But the question is, how did we get to this point? How did everything start? And Sabette is our resident historian from Princeton University, who's graduated just recently, and she's here to give you a little bit of an update on just the history of disability movements.
Yeah, so a big part of the book and to gain an understanding of our contemporary kind of disability rights movement and the issues that we're grappling with today, we do have to understand the history and how we got here today. And it starts all the way back with philosophers. I believe it was Plato. Was it Plato who said? Aristotle. Yeah, it was Aristotle who said that the deaf weren't educable, and that's it kind of sets the ball rolling for how we view people with disabilities. Philosophers and the kind of makers of Western thought, as they say, starting off with saying that a subset of people that we live with do not deserve an education, cannot be educated, are not like us. And then if you fast forward to more contemporary historical times, you look at World War II and the Nazi regime, and people with disabilities were often targets of the eugenic ideals of Hitler and the Nazis, and they, including with the killings of millions of Jews, thousands of people with disabilities were also killed because they believed that people with disabilities did not have the right to live or were not meant to be part of the community. And then if you look at, in America, in the United States, how we have historically treated people with disabilities, we also have our own eugenics movement that we still see remnants of today in our policies. Woodrow Wilson, when he was governor of New Jersey before becoming president of the United States, actually enacted a eugenics law that sterilized women with disabilities in the state. It allowed for the state to forcibly sterilize women with disabilities because they saw that they should not be able to reproduce and they should not be able to have the right to have children and decide for themselves what they were going to do with their bodies and their lives. And then when he becomes president, that kind of is ignored, and now we're unearthing some of the legacies of discrimination that he's perpetuated. However, that's kind of a side of the history that's not readily talked about even today. And then we also look at certain policies like the Fair Labor and Standards Act of 1938, which allowed for the sub-minimum wage for people with disabilities, and that is something that is still occurring in many states today, including in Iowa, where people with disabilities are allowed to be paid under the minimum wage, sometimes cents per hour. And that's kind of a big thing that not many people are aware of. Many experts in the field, even legal experts, are kind of in the dark about some of these policies, but this is something that dates back to 1938, and it's something that's happening in 2026 in many states across the country. And then the practice of institutionalization is also something that in the 1970s was kind of brought to the surface by reports from Geraldo Rivera, but it's still something that's going on in many of the states, including the state of Iowa. And there's constant reports of abuses and neglect occurring, and not many people are either unaware, ignorant, or they don't see it as a big issue. But that's kind of the historical point where we find ourselves in today. And it's part of the reason why Robert is still advocating for change, why we're all advocating for change, and we're all here today to spread awareness.
So part of the, and that's great, and part of the issue was when getting the public to know what's going on. So after certainly the eugenics movement with President Woodrow Wilson and the way that was carried out many years later, and still in existence in many states, just like the sub-minimum wage, when there was a lot of rampant abuse throughout the history of disability movement. And the thing that really started to be the seminal moment of changing was Geraldo Rivera. He was the media. This is where he got his first kick, his first known idea, and he was as an investigative journalist. And he was kind enough to write the foreword in this book for us, and I'm very happy with that. But what happened was Geraldo went into Willowbrook, which is a horrific institution in Staten Island with 6,000 people with significant levels of disabilities. And the 6,000 people were absolutely mistreated. And when he went in, they sugarcoated it and said, "Oh, come on in," and they had him meet the head of the institution and a couple of staff, and they were dressed in suits and ties and said, "Oh, well, yeah, this is a lovely place." And so Geraldo didn't really have much to go on. Geraldo went to leave, and there was a man named Bernard Carabello. Bernard Carabello came up to him and said, with severe cerebral palsy, and he said, "Take this key and come back tonight." So Geraldo came that evening, and he went in this back door, and he saw the horrific carnage that went on there. And and he talks a lot about it, and I've personally seen some of these things. A person, for example, who had an infection in his eye, but after the infection was taken down. He had a thumbtack embedded in it. There was the routine use of cattle prods. They called that aversion therapy. And it being in Iowa, you all know what cattle prods are used for. This was used for people. And so when Geraldo showed these horrific issues, the way that it was able to metastasize into something more known to the media was there was a guy in his apartment with his wife, and his wife's name was Yoko, and his name was John, and he was sitting there and he said, "Oh my goodness, look at this terrible thing. We have to do something to see that if we can help with that." Now, as a sidebar, we all know what's going on in this country, and we know that people demonstrate and they yell and scream and they have signs, and that's nice. But the question is, how effective is this? Well, what John Lennon was able to show was a way to make it effective. John Lennon went and he called a couple of his friends, a guy with a disability named Stevie Wonder, happened to be blind, and Roberta Flack, and they went to do a concert. They had originally planned to do one concert at Madison Square Garden, but the queue was so long they were able to do two concerts. And they played wonderful songs, and they also had Geraldo Rivera that they recognized. And they made a whole bunch of money. They took that whole bunch of money, and Geraldo Rivera incorporated a corporation, and that corporation, a nonprofit, took the money, and they litigated. They were able to sue the state of New York. So it was Willowbrook parents against against Governor Carey, who at that time was the governor of the state of New York. And that turned into the Willowbrook consent decree, which resulted in the 6,000 people who lived at that facility to close it down. And Sabette and I had the pleasure of actually, they converted the entire institution, part of it, to a university.
Yeah.
And Sabette and I were actually able to speak to that.
Yeah, on the former grounds of Willowbrook. It's now the College of Staten Island. Yeah.
So that's amazing that you talk about really repurposing something. And we were talking to a couple of folks recently. For example, we helped shut down an institution called the Western Center. The Western Center, and I talk about it in here, was in Pittsburgh. And the Western Center, in case you never heard of it, when I went to the Western Center the first time, I felt this feeling of ominous evil. I felt this feeling like you feel when you're looking at the grassy knoll where Kennedy was shot, and I didn't understand why. Well, subliminally, I didn't realize it, but this is where they filmed Silence of the Lambs. So what I was seeing was Hannibal Lecter subliminally. Now, again, we shut that institution down, and we converted it all to condos, the Allegheny County and the state of Pennsylvania. And I urge the people from Iowa to think about converting Glenwood to something that's more maybe affordable housing or something like that would be more beneficial since it's been closed down. So these are some of the ways that we've seen the media actually have a positive impact on the lives of people with disabilities.
Yeah, and when we talk about like some of the more insidious practices, obviously institutionalization is one of them, but there's also the prevalence of nursing homes and private equity in the disability space, where that's also impacting the level of care that people are receiving, the way that people are treated as well. With private equity in particular, you say we're used to seeing private equity buy up Dunkin' Donuts or computer companies and other franchises, but when they enter the care space and the disability space, they're treating actual people with disabilities as a commodity, as a means to make money, and that essentially their bottom end is trying to reduce the cost of care anyway and by any means, and that inherently also reduces the level of care that people receive. In various states, this has become a big issue. I think the only state where that is illegal is in New York. They have protections against private equity entering the care space, but we do see that they're quickly buying up nonprofit agencies. They're buying up anywhere that they can possibly flourish, and it's leading to the further neglect of people in people's very own communities often. And it is a big problem that is addressed in the book, and it's something that we're addressing in Community Options.
And there's 17,000 people right now that are living still in institutions. There's several hundred that are living in institutions in Iowa, and as Sabette had mentioned, one of the things that they're doing is But some of the states have closed their institutions. For example, there's no institutional care in New Mexico. There's no institutional care in Minnesota. But what they're doing is, when they have these huge waiting lists, and there are lots of people with disabilities are all over, and people with disabilities are growing up. And what happens is, mom and dad, mom had triple bypass surgery, dad has one foot on a banana peel, and they've got Johnny, and they can't pick him up and put him in the bathtub anymore, and they need services. So they go on a waiting list, and sometimes there's nothing left, so they'll go to a nursing home. So we've seen thousands of people, literally thousands of people, who are now going into nursing homes who are under the age of 50, 40, 30, 20 years old. I had the experience of getting a person emancipated from a nursing home at 23 years old in Syracuse, New York. So this goes on, and it's very prevalent. In the realms of private equity, we really need to figure out ways to stop them from doing this as a methodology.
Yeah, and us as community members, I think a big part of what the book is trying to do is to make us aware of what is going on in our own communities, in our own backyards, and make us kind of cognizant of the fact that people with disabilities are neighbors, are family members, are friends, are coworkers, and there is significant gaps in the ways that our policies address the needs of people with disabilities, and us as community members can come together to kind of overcome that ignorance gap of seeing others as others. And we have the 12 calls to action, and a lot of them are just doing that, being aware of some of our behaviors when we're being exclusionary, or just calling out our neighbors when we see that kind of NIMBYism of a lot of people say, like, I don't want people with disabilities in my communities. Like, it's a big problem that we encounter at community options. But a lot of the call to action in this book, and the thing that we urge people to do is to not only educate yourself, but educate those in your community, and then become an advocate in your community. Talk to elected officials if you can. Talk to, I don't know, the local baker. I read this thing, and I didn't know that this was occurring in the United States in my community, but I think it's something that you can make a difference, and you can employ someone with disabilities at your place of work. You can include someone with disabilities at your place of worship. You say that the level of loneliness and the level of someone's, the severity of someone's disability is as often, they're kind of like a symbiotic relationship almost, because they've historically been excluded in our society in various ways, but we can do something to overcome that.
So I was explaining before to another individual in the audience earlier. I was in Houston last week, and R.J. Mitty came in, and R.J. Mitty is a television movie star, and he had cerebral palsy, and he played the son of the in Breaking Bad, and he came to the book signing in Houston. And I asked him if he wanted to say anything, and he talked a little bit about what it was like, having to deal with having cerebral palsy and being treated differently. And he said, and there's 12 points in here or is it 12 or 10? 12. And there's 12 points in here that we talk about relative to the points that about what a person what you can do with the public. And we say, for example, vote. That's important. You have to vote. How you organize, how you get people with disabilities involved in your community. And as Sabette was saying, there's a direct relationship between the severity of your disability and your level of loneliness. And the other thing that we always look at is the fact that, our quality of life goes up when we're with other people. Socialization is the most important thing. And if we ostracize or segregate or keep someone apart, then that is going to make a big difference. But when we went through these points, R.J. Mitty said, I'm going to give you something you could use, Robert. And he said, the title of the book is Silent No Longer. And he said, I want to know, everyone in this room, when will you be silent no longer? When will we speak out more? When will we try to figure out how to make them part of our community, part of our friends? And when you see somebody walking down the street, just do that. And the other thing I challenge everyone, special education. We talk about the special student who goes to special, who's trained by a special ed teacher who takes a special bus to the special school because he's special. We say that, from now on, try to think about special as being only used for occasions or things on sale. Those are specials. But people with disabilities want to be just like everyone else. We have 750 small homes throughout the country. We have 4 of them in Council Bluffs. And if you drive by our home, you won't know that it's any different than any other house. If you look at the 1,000 vans that we have, that we transport all the people in, you will not see that van being any different than any other van. It doesn't have a logo on the side. It doesn't have anything special about it. It's just like everyone else. So we want to be, is the old television show, like the Cheers motto, where everybody knows your name and everybody's glad that you came. So we're trying to get people with disabilities to be treated like that, like everyone else, not especially, but the same as others.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I think, when we think about community, we think about, people we hold dearly to us, people that kind of make the fabric of what it is to even live where we live. And you can't exclude people with disabilities from that. You just can't.
So thank you all very much. We're going to conclude the Facebook piece of this, and then we're going to open it up for questions. So thank you.
Okay.